Joining me now, as he does each and every week, is Sky News Australia's media watchdog columnist, Gerard Henderson. Thank you for joining us on the desk.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to have a quick listen to John Lyons because we talk about him a little bit on this show.
We do a bit.
A little bit on this show, and he's doing some interesting reporting. Let's have a look.
UN World Food Programme is appealing for food supplies to be upscaled immediately to address the hunger crisis there. America's editor John Lyons has the latest from Washington.
Ehud Olmert said, "What is it if not a war crime? How can a serious person representing the Israeli government spell it out in such an explicit manner that we should starve Gaza, that there should be no supply of basic fundamental humanitarian needs? Many of these children barely had any food or water or medicines. The BBC recently reported 6 babies freezing to death."
But, Gerard, I thought that he was now there, Washington.
Well, he had been the Global Affairs editor. That's now gone to Laura Tingle, and he's the editor Americas. So he's gone to Washington to, as he said, translate the Trump administration to us people down here. But what he's in Washington talking about Gaza, which is not really his area. If he were talking about the US administration's policy, that would be different. For most of this interview, which went on for a long time, he only spoke about Gaza, but he's a long, long way away from Gaza. But, I mean, in a sense, he's always been hostile to the Israeli government. He's been hostile to the Jewish community in Australia. I suspect that's one of the reasons why he was moved across to the Americas. But over in the Americas, or in Washington, D.C., he's still talking about Gaza and Israel.
Well, it's definitely there, ABC, and this next grab will prove that. Listen to this puff piece they've done about Laura Tingle.
Laura, what preparations are you making for turning your attention from Australia? How are you preparing for it?
I suppose it would be easy to say it's going to be completely different, but I want to do for the world what I've done for Australia, which is the world ready for this. But, I mean, I want to essentially, particularly at 7:30, I don't see myself as a newsbreaker. I see myself as an explainer.
Gerard, is the world ready? This person has tickets on themselves. I want to do for the world what I've done for Australia, and is the world ready?
But also she's going to explain the whole wide world to Australia. So there we've got John Lyons in Washington translating the Trump administration for us mere mortals, and Laura Tingle travelling the world, translating the world, explaining the world for us.
It's so absurd.
How would we know about the world without this?
She legitimately thinks she's probably one of the best reporters in the world.
Oh, I'm sure she is.
That's the only thing I can take away from that.
But it's a plum job. I mean, no one's mentioning, they had a sort of celebration for her leaving last night, but no one's mentioning that Laura Tingle said this was a racist country, or that she said that the coalition government under Scott Morrison was guilty of ideological bastardry. These things are forgotten. At any rate, she's now off around the world. She won't be saying those things anymore because, again, she's been sort of promoted upwards.
I believe she called Peter Dutton dangerous, or
that's right. She called
rhetoric
Peter Dutton
dangerous, and that's as you're going into an election, someone that's supposed to be impartial. Is she going to do that for the world?
Well,
I don't know if the world necessarily wants that. Let's move on, because we've noticed that the ABC has a particular way that they introduce guests who are a little bit more on the conservative side of the spectrum. Let's have a watch.
Australia spends about $56 billion each year on the nation's defence, but a new report from the think tank, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, says that amount doesn't match the current threats to Australia or even the future threats. Justin Bassey is ASPI's Executive Director, and full disclosure, he also worked as a Chief of Staff and advisor to former Liberal ministers, including Malcolm Turnbull, Maurice Payne and George Brandis.
Let's get the latest from the ABC's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman and Mark Kenny, a former doyen of the Canberra Press Gallery and now a professor at the Australian National University. Thanks both of you for joining us on ABC Radio National.
It's all very well to do that with the disclaimers, but do they do it when there are Teals-affiliated people or these so-called influencers that keep getting a run, who have got paid sponsorships with other politicians?
No, they do. And the ABC never, no, I don't think they should have, but they never said that Kerry O'Brien was once worked for Gough Whitlam or that Barry Cassidy once worked with Bob Hawke. And here we've got Mark Kenny. Now, Mark Kenny's first job was to work for a socialist left or a left-of-centre Labor politician. So he's a former Labor political staffer out of South Australia. Now, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm a former political staffer on the coalition side, but what you find is that anyone who's on the coalition side is nominated, like, you know, be wary of this because this is going to be biased. But if you're Comrade Kenny, that's all okay. I mean, he's just telling the truth. And not only that, he's the doyen of the press story. I don't know how he got that position, but at any rate, he's sort of the Laurie Oakes or the Michelle Grattan of the press story. I never noticed that when he was there. But all I'm saying is it ought to be balanced. If you're going to say, look, be wary, this guy used to work or this woman used to work for the coalition, you've got to say, well, be wary, this guy used to work for Labor, but they don't do that.
Definitely, and that's the thing. It's the lack of equality around how they do it, and we could hash out whether it's appropriate to give somebody a disclaimer politically all day. We could talk about the merits. Is it bad telly? Is it bad radio, etc. But I have noticed that you get people, you know, Hannah Ferguson, that influencer who thinks she's the one that thinks the word influencer is misogynistic, so she real IQ on that one. But this person goes on to the ABC and is not told to be somebody who is in partnership with a Allegra spender.
Yes.
Right. So there are direct cases where the audience is getting a very one-sided.
Well, it's the other side of the lack of viewpoint diversity. You've got a lack of viewpoint diversity and you've got a lack of equality in how people are introduced. Now, I mean, I think we should read the report, form our own views about it. We're not stupid. We can work out where people come from. But the ABC now seem to think that if you've got a coalition background, this has got to be nominated, which is one of the reasons why why so many of their panels are completely lacking in balance. Because
and why would you go on it as the token Conservative?
Well, no, and many don't, and that's why Q&A panels have been so unbalanced for many times, because many Conservatives won't go on, and others, like me, aren't invited. So.
Well, luckily now we've got Laura Tingle to explain the world
explain
to
it to us,
because we wouldn't know what to do without her. Gerard Henderson, thank you so much for joining me.